Well, I think the overall relationship with Iran is flawed in terms of how we're going about it. They're our enemy. They've expressed it. They believe that that we're still the great Satan, and yet we're making these unilateral concessions. If the president had kept to his negotiating positions at the very beginning, we would have had a great deal. But he unilaterally conceded everything, and then only focused on the nuclear program that they had, rather than their ambitions in the region. And we see what happens when they are unleashed, in effect, and now they'll have over $100 billion in short order to continue to be the largest sponsor of terrorism. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy that the hostages are out in return for people who violated the law, by the way. This is not the same thing. People that were there.
Would you have done that deal?
I don't know all the details. I don't think I would have. I think it may set the stage for having other hostages be taken by countries that are enemies of ours. But at the same time, look, it's really hard to say, be harsh about this because people's families are being unified. A reporter only doing his job is out of prison. A pastor is the same. I mean, so that's good news. But the bad news is that we show a position of weakness the way we've negotiated with Iran. And the net result is our former allies, or allies like Saudi Arabia and others now, no longer think that we have their back. And that creates insecurity. And that's what I'm going to say is the United States has been a force for good in the world when we're consistent, when we aren't necessarily the world's policeman, but when we lead. And right now we're not.
Your education plan. Right now we have 529 college savings plans. You want to make that for everything, right?
Yeah.
Just explain. So instead of just being dedicated to college, what could it be used for?
It could be used for private schools in the K-12 system, for tutoring, for a certification program, so that you're focused on college and career readiness along with going to higher education, and making it easier for people to invest in, particularly for low-income kids, invest in a tax-free basis, invest in people's future. And
explain to me, so I didn't realize the federal government spends $22 billion, according to your press release.
It does.
In federal dollars every year on 44 different programs.
For pre-K. That's only pre-K.
That's pre-K, okay.
Only pre-K.
You want to do something very different. You're going to take all that money and do what with it?
If Florida wanted to expand its early childhood literacy-based program, which we have the largest in the country, we should be able to take that money, if the states wanted to do it, and give it out in the form of a voucher every year. It would be $2,500 for low-income families every year to allow for people to be ready to go to school. The whole point is all these programs fund the bureaucracy. 44 programs, $22 billion. I mean, think of the mind-numbing paperwork that goes on with that. Why not trust people to make decisions for their families? And so whether it's the K-12 system or pre-K or college, the whole point of this ought to be we should be empowering people rather than bureaucracy so that they can rise up.
What happens to the public school system if you start shifting students away from the public system toward the private school system if families are able to save more and they would then be able to exercise a preference for that system?
Well, the very fact that if they had that choice and they would go to a private option means that the public schools would have to get better. Gosh. What a horrible idea.
But how would you do that?
Well, we've done it in Florida. We have the largest voucher programs, and public schools are better. Competition works. It works in every interview that you have in the real world. It would certainly work in education. It has in Florida. And the net effect of this is that putting consumers, in this case parents, in charge of their children's education will make all schools better.
You want to give every single high school graduate a $50,000 line of credit?
Yeah.
Even if you come from a wealthy family?
Yeah, just as you can access, because you can access the student loan program right now. That's no different than what we have. The difference is instead of paying it back with recourse debt, with interest rate conditions,
meaning you have to pay it back as opposed to...
You pay it back based on income.
Right.
1% per $10,000 of education dollars that you spend. The net effect of this is that you'll have more people going to college, graduating without this huge burden. In the last 6 years, the student loan program has doubled in size. It's now $1.2 trillion. No underwriting criteria. This would be a system that put a cap on the amount that you could have. It would make higher education entities have to have skin in the game, and you would focus on lowering costs rather than using the student loan program to finance all of their higher costs.
If it's only 1% of their income for 25 years, what if they don't pay it back?
1% per $10,000.
Thank you for the clarification.
And so you would have to pay it back. You would pay it back over a period of time, and it would have...
But what if you never hit the $50,000 because you make so little money? Does the taxpayer pick that up?
Just as we do now. Exactly. And people that pay that do pay it back. Overall, on a net basis, this won't be, in terms of cost, this actually will save money for the taxpayers. But more importantly, it will be a market-based means by which we access higher education. And imagine these accounts that I was describing, all the way from pre-K all the way up, being built up over time, so that families would have a choice beyond debt. Look, the system we have doesn't work. Why is everybody wanting to defend it all of a sudden? I'm just kind of curious. The system we have today has rising default rates, doubling of the debt, recourse debt on the backs of young people. Graduation rates are horrific.
Tuition costs are rising.
Right. Why?
That?
Yeah, you know why? Because it's financed by the federal government student loan program. There is no accountability. Our system puts a cap on the loans and forces people, the institutions, to lower costs rather than raise costs, because they have to have skin in the game.
Private institutions can only raise tuition as much as inflation or less than inflation?
Markets will do this by themselves. If you have a cap on the amount of money that can be financed, which is what we're proposing at $50,000, you'll see everybody's interest aligning, which is get kids to graduate with a 4-year degree in 4 years and do it at a lower cost, not a higher cost.
Can I ask you, how come your message is not resonating more? You know, yesterday I watched Donald Trump up in New Hampshire calling you and Hillary Clinton puppets for campaign donors again. Yeah. You have a sort of comprehensive education plan here. How come that message is not being heard more than it
Well, it is beginning to be heard, and if you go to New Hampshire right now, you'll see that we're on the rise. Polls show in South Carolina and Iowa we're rising up. Got a long way to go, but at the end of the day, people are going to want to know who can sit behind the big desk and make tough decisions, and who's serious. Donald Trump has proposed a 45% tariff on all imports for China. He can deny it now, but that's what he proposed. He's proposed, in effect, a global depression. Have you guys talked about that? I mean, this is you're a business channel. You have a lot of people that watch. I mean, that would be devastating.
Well, what's the current state of the economy in your mind?
It's bumping along. We got to reform how we tax and how we regulate. We have to embrace the energy revolution. We should be growing at far closer to 4% than 2%. That's how you solve this problem. You don't scare people by saying the Chinese are taking advantage of us and we'll have a global depression with a 45% tariff. The retaliation on that would hurt Iowa agriculture, manufacturers all across this country. It would be dead, and consumers would pay a heavy price. This is the kind of thing that someone needs to pause and say, hey, crazy talk isn't going to help us get out of the mess we're in.
Why does the American public keep then listening to his message
because
if you say it's so crazy?
Anxious. Oh, you don't think it's crazy, a 45% tariff?
No, I'm not suggesting. I'm not suggesting either way. But he says what he wants, and yet his poll numbers aren't heard at all.
Because people are anxious.
You put yourself out there as saying you have a more credible message. Your poll numbers don't improve.
I do have a more credible message for sure, and I have leadership skills to prove that I can do big things. And my job is to go convince people in the early states that that's the case. But the simple fact is, if people paused and saw his ideas and paused and reflected on them, and if they think that that's the strong horse, basically advocating a global depression or all the other things he's suggesting, I think there'll be a reality check. And either Trump's going to change his mind on these subjects, which I doubt, or he's going to pay a price. He's not going to become president of the United States, though, with these kind of attitudes.
Is New Hampshire your last stand? What if you don't do as well?
No, we're on the ballot in every state. This is a crazy time. You know, this election is, there are a lot of people running. We have the resources to go the distance. So I can't tell you how it's going to go. I can tell you tonight, I'll have a town hall meeting in New Hampshire, and I've got 4 days up there. We're making really good progress.
When we think about the 2012 primaries, Santorum took Iowa, Gingrich took South Carolina, Romney took New Hampshire. You've said that you'd be willing to lose a primary to win the general, but do you see Donald Trump, Ted Cruz as being the Rick Santorum of this election?
Every election's different. And as I said, there's deep disaffection in the country right now. People are angry that Washington's not working, angry with the president and his policies. And I got to make the case that we can disrupt the order in Washington, D.C. And that's what I do each and every day, and we're making good progress.
Hey YouTube fans, I'm Landon Dowdy from CNBC. Thanks so much for checking out our channel. Here you'll find videos packed with all the info that you need to be smarter about your finances. Be sure and subscribe by clicking right here, and click on all the videos around me to see CNBC's original series Young Money, Tech Bet, Cramer's Mad Money, and all the latest from CNBC.